The Galactic Council prided itself on its control over history. Every species under its dominion knew only what was allowed, believed only what was permitted, and questioned nothing beyond the official records. It had been this way for thousands of years, a system carefully crafted to maintain order. The concept of a lost civilization was not unheard of. Many races had fallen to time, war, or extinction. But there was one species that no one dared to speak of, one name that had been erased so thoroughly that even the mention of it was forbidden: humanity. According to every historical document, humans had never existed. There was no proof, no records, and no artifacts. But Drolvek, auxiliary historian obsessed with the past, had never accepted the official narratives so blindly. He had spent years uncovering secrets buried beneath layers of lies, and now, after decades of searching, he stood before something that was never meant to be found: a hidden vault, deep beneath the ruins of an ancient world, untouched for thousands of years. Drolvek's claws trembled as he activated his scanning device, watching in disbelief as the readings confirmed what he had suspected. This vault was old, far older than the Council's official timeline allowed. The technology surrounding it did not belong to any known species. The markings on the metal doors were unfamiliar, yet something about them sent a chill down his spine. With a deep breath, he placed his hand against the control panel, and the ancient mechanisms groaned to life. Dust and debris filled the air as the doors slid open, revealing a chamber illuminated by a faint, flickering blue light. The walls were lined with strange symbols, and at the center of the room, a single console remained active, its interface displaying an alien language, one that should not exist. Drolvek knew this was dangerous. If the Council discovered what he had found, he would disappear like so many before him. But he had come too far to turn back now. His fingers moved over the console, deciphering the patterns, and as he accessed the data within, the screen shifted, revealing something that made his heart pound: historical records. Real records, not the carefully curated lies the Council fed the galaxy. He scrolled through endless streams of information: images of colossal warships, planetary maps marked with names he did not recognize, and reports detailing battles that had never been recorded in galactic history. And then he saw them. The humans. Their faces, their cities, their armies. Proof that they had once stood among the stars. Drolvek's breath caught as he realized the scale of the deception. Humanity had not simply vanished. They had been erased. Every trace of their existence had been systematically removed, every record rewritten, every world they once inhabited wiped clean. But why? What had they done to warrant such a fate? As he continued reading, his blood ran cold. The humans had not been an ordinary species. They had been different. They had been dangerous, not because of their weapons or numbers, but because of something far worse: their resilience. They did not break like other races. They did not surrender. The records spoke of wars where humanity had been outnumbered 100-1 and still emerged victorious. They had defied the Council's greatest fleets, shattered entire armadas, and fought until the very last breath. And when they could fight no more, they had done the unthinkable. They had made the Council afraid. Afraid enough to rewrite history itself. The final entries in the database were fragmented, corrupted by time. But one message remained intact, a warning written in a language that no longer existed, yet Drolvek understood every word. They erased us, but we are not gone, not forever. The moment he read those words, the chamber trembled, and an alarm blared through the ruins. Someone, or something, had detected the vault's activation. Drolvek's heart pounded as he disconnected the data drive and sprinted toward his ship. He had uncovered the greatest secret in the galaxy, a truth buried beneath centuries of lies. But now he was being hunted. As he took off into the dark void of space, he knew one thing for certain: the galaxy had been deceived, and he would not rest until the truth was known. Drolvek had spent his entire life searching for forgotten truths, but now The truth was chasing him. His ship, a small and modified scout vessel, tore through the void at full speed, its engines burning hotter than ever before. The stolen data drive sat secured in his cabin, holding proof that humanity had once existed, a truth the Galactic Council had buried for centuries. He had barely escaped the ruins of the Forbidden Vault, and now, the consequences of his discovery were closing in fast. His ship's sensors flashed red as multiple signatures appeared on his radar. Unmarked vessels, sleek and fast, the kind used for silent eliminations. They weren't broadcasting any signals, which meant only one thing. They were here to ensure that whatever he had found never left his possession. His claws danced over the controls, activating every evasive maneuver he knew, sending his ship into a series of unpredictable spins and jumps between asteroid fields. The Council's forces were relentless, their plasma fire cutting through space just meters from his hull. He pushed the engines to their limit, adrenaline surging as he dove into a dense nebula, using the thick clouds to break their line of sight. For a moment, silence filled the cockpit, only the hum of his ship's systems reminding him that he was still alive. He didn't dare stop. The Council had already shown what they were willing to do to keep their secrets, and he had no intention of being their next victim. As he punched in new coordinates, he thought back to what he had uncovered. The records were undeniable. Humanity had once been a dominant force in the galaxy, feared and respected, until they were systematically erased. But why? What had made them so dangerous? The answer had to be somewhere in the old war logs he had retrieved, but decoding them would take time. Time he didn't have. He needed help, someone who could not only analyze the data, but also had the resources to keep him alive. There was only one name that came to mind: Kaler Vesh, an information broker who thrived in the underbelly of the galactic trade hubs. If anyone could help him stay ahead of the Council, it was Vesh. Navigating through the lawless Outer Rim, he arrived at the shadowy world of Drosk 5, a planet known for its black markets and hidden dealings. The spaceport was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of burning fuel and secrecy. He kept his hood up as he moved through the crowd, every instinct telling him that eyes were already on him. He found Vesh in a private booth at a rundown cantina, surrounded by holographic screens displaying streams of intercepted transmissions. The broker was a Drelkin, his reptilian eyes gleaming with amusement as he leaned forward. "Drelvek," he hissed, his voice a mix of curiosity and caution. "I hear you've been stirring up ghosts." Drelvek wasted no time. He placed the data drive on the table and activated a small projection of the files. Vesh's amusement vanished as the human images appeared: battle formations, technological blueprints, and most importantly, logs detailing the Council's cover-up. He leaned back, his expression unreadable. "This," he muttered, tapping his claws against the table. "This is dangerous knowledge." Drelvek nodded. "I need to know everything. I need to know why they were erased." Vesh exhaled slowly before inserting the drive into his own system. As the files decrypted, his eyes widened. "It wasn't just a war," he murmured. "It was a massacre. The Council tried to break them, but the humans, they wouldn't fall. Every time they were outnumbered, they adapted. Every time they were cornered, they found a way out. They didn't just fight with weapons. They fought with strategy, unpredictability, and something the Council never understood: determination." He glanced up at Drelvek, his expression grim. They didn't erase humans because they were a threat to peace. They erased them because they were a threat to control. The weight of the revelation settled in. If this was true, then the Galactic Council had rewritten history to protect its own rule. Humanity hadn't just disappeared. They had been hunted, their entire existence turned into a forbidden myth. But if the Council had gone to such lengths to wipe them out, could it be possible that something remained? A remnant, a survivor, anything. Before Drelvek could voice his thoughts, an explosion rocked the cantina. The doors burst open, and armored soldiers flooded in, weapons raised. The council's enforcers had found him. Vesh acted instantly, slamming a hidden switch that dropped a smoke screen between them. "Run," he barked, tossing the drive back to Dralvek. He didn't need to be told twice. He pushed through the chaos, blaster fire slicing through the air as he sprinted toward the back exit. His ship was waiting just beyond the docks, but the enforcers were everywhere. Their orders clear: eliminate the historian, retrieve the data. Dralvek ducked behind a cargo crate, his mind racing. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of time. But then, something unexpected happened. The emergency sirens blared across the spaceport, followed by a distorted transmission overriding the public channels. It was a voice, deep, commanding, and undeniably human. "You tried to erase us, but you cannot erase the truth." The enforcers hesitated, their attention split between Dralvek and the sudden intrusion. That moment of distraction was all he needed. He bolted for his ship, engines already roaring to life as he launched into the sky. As he broke through the atmosphere, his mind reeled. The transmission, it had to be an automated message, a warning left behind by the humans long ago. But what if it wasn't? What if someone out there had been waiting for the truth to resurface? As the stars stretched before him, Dralvek knew one thing: the Council's greatest lie was unraveling, and he was now at the center of it. The hunt for the last remnants of humanity had begun. The cold metal floor of the escape pod vibrated under Doran's weight as he sat in silence, staring at the endless void beyond the small viewport. Stars stretched infinitely, indifferent to the destruction he had just escaped. His breathing was slow, controlled, but his mind was anything but calm. The battle was over. The war was lost. Humanity, as a species, was no more. He was the last. Only hours ago, the U.S. Valor had stood as humanity's final line of defense, a massive warship bristling with weapons, holding its position against an enemy that had spent decades hunting them to extinction. The HFY Dominion, a ruthless empire that feared what humans could become, had not stopped until every colony, every fleet, and every soldier had been wiped from existence. The battle had been hopeless from the beginning. The enemy's numbers were overwhelming, their technology superior, but still, humanity had fought like demons, refusing to die quietly. Doran had been one of them, a soldier who had sworn to fight until his last breath. But fate had other plans. He had been forced into the escape pod by his captain, thrown inside, and ejected moments before the ship detonated in a final desperate act. The explosion had been so bright it had momentarily turned space into daylight. And now, only debris remained: floating metal, shattered armor, and the dead bodies of those who had fought beside him. His hands clenched into fists as he replayed those last moments in his mind. The captain's voice echoed in his ears. One must survive. One must remember. It felt like a curse rather than an honor. Doran checked the pod's systems. The distress beacon was off. He had disabled it the moment he realized he was alone. The HFY would be hunting for survivors, ensuring no human remained. If they found him, they would erase him without hesitation. He was drifting now, hidden among the wreckage, just another piece of broken history floating in the emptiness. His oxygen supply was limited, his food reserves barely enough for a week, and his weapons, a simple pulse pistol and a survival knife, were laughable against an enemy that had just wiped out his entire race. For hours, maybe even days, he drifted. Sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. Every shadow in space felt like a predator, every flicker of light a potential enemy ship. The silence was suffocating. He had been trained for war, for battle, but not for this. This endless waiting, this slow descent into nothingness. He wondered if this was how humanity would truly end, not with fire and fury, but with a single survivor slowly fading into the void. Then the signal came. A faint, broken transmission crackled through his dying comm system. It was weak, distorted, almost unrecognizable, but it was there, a voice. His heart pounded. It was impossible. No one could have survived the massacre. His hands moved quickly over the controls, adjusting the frequencies, trying to isolate the message. The words were barely audible through the static, but they sent a shiver down his spine. If you are human, you are not alone. Doran's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't just a distress signal. It was a message of survival. Someone else was out there. Someone had made it. His fingers flew across the console, triangulating the signal source. It was weak, coming from the far edge of the system, where only ice fields and abandoned stations remained. If it was a trap, it was a clever one. But if it wasn't? With a deep breath, he engaged the pod's thrusters, moving toward the last spark of hope he had left. The journey was slow, agonizing, his limited fuel forcing him to drift more than fly. The silence grew heavier as he approached the location. It was an old listening post, once used by humans to monitor enemy movements before the war had turned against them. Now it was a graveyard, silent, lifeless, forgotten. But as he approached, it was damaged, barely functional, its hull scorched and broken, but it was there. And then the comms crackled again. Identify yourself. Doran's throat was dry. He hadn't spoken in days, hadn't expected to hear another human voice ever again. He pressed the transmitter, his voice hoarse but steady. Lieutenant Doran Vale, last survivor of the U.S. Valor. There was silence. Then a heavy sigh. Not the last. Soldier, get aboard. We have work to do. Doran didn't hesitate. He guided his pod toward the ship's docking bay, barely believing what was happening. As the airlock sealed behind him, he was met with the sight of survivors, scared, tired, but alive. A handful of soldiers, engineers, and one commanding officer he had thought long dead. Their leader, an old war veteran named Commander Rains, clapped a hand on his shoulder. They think we're gone, Rains said, his eyes burning with the same fire that had driven humanity for centuries. They think they've won. But as long as one of us still breathes, this war isn't over. Doran felt something he hadn't in a long time. Hope. He had thought himself the last, a ghost drifting toward oblivion. But now he knew the truth. Humanity wasn't finished. It was just beginning. The stars had long forgotten the name of humanity. The galaxy had moved on, believing them to be nothing more than a lost species, wiped from existence by the merciless HFY dominion. For 100 years, the silence of deep space had been undisturbed by human voices, their worlds now nothing but desolate ruins, their legacy reduced to whispers in forbidden archives. No species spoke of them openly. The punishment for even mentioning humans was severe. Execution or worse. The Dominion had ensured that history itself would forget them. But history had a habit of making mistakes. At the edge of the galaxy, in a system long abandoned and thought lifeless, something stirred in the darkness. A massive ship, old yet fully operational, emerged from the shadows of a dying star. Its hull was scarred with the wounds of an ancient war, its weapon systems powered down but far from useless. It had been waiting, watching. And now, the time had come. The Nemesis, last of the human dreadnoughts, was awake, and it was not alone. Deep within the ship, in the command chamber, Captain Elias Carter stood in silence, his eyes fixed on the holographic display before him. Around him, the bridge was filled with men and women who should have been dead, their uniforms old, their faces hardened by time. They were the forgotten, the last remnants of humanity, hidden away in cryogenic stasis for a century, waiting for the right moment to return. The moment had come. Status report, Carter ordered, his voice steady. A woman beside him, Lieutenant Voss, checked the console. All systems functional. Weapons online. Shields at full capacity. And, sir, the signal was received. Carter's grip on the console tightened. The signal. The reason they had awakened. Before the war had ended, before humanity had been wiped out, the greatest minds of their race had planned for a future no one else could see. A single transmission had been programmed into the Nemesis, buried deep in its core. A distress call meant for one purpose, to awaken them when the time was right. But who had sent it? And more importantly, why now? Where did it come from? Carter asked. Voss hesitated before responding. Xelfar Prime. Silence fell over the bridge. Far Prime was the heart of the Dominion, the enemy's capital, a world where no human had set foot and lived. If the signal had come from there, it could mean only one thing. Someone had survived. Someone was calling for them. Carter's jaw clenched. Set course. Maximum speed. The crew moved instantly, the ship's engines roaring to life. The Nemesis had been built for war, designed to be the last weapon of a dying species. Now, it was a ghost ship returning to a galaxy that had long forgotten it. But the galaxy was about to remember. As they neared Dominion space, the first signs of resistance appeared. Far patrol ships detected their presence, moving in to investigate. Carter stood firm as the enemy vessels hailed them, demanding identification. He gave none. Instead, he gave the order no Xelfar had heard in 100 years. Fire. The Nemesis came alive, its cannons unleashing destruction that had not been seen in a century. The Xelfar ships were obliterated before they could react. The survivors barely had time to send a warning before silence reclaimed the void. But it was too late. The Forgotten had returned. By the time they reached Xelfar Prime, the Dominion was in chaos. Defense fleets scrambled to intercept, but the Nemesis tore through them with brutal efficiency. The once invincible enemy, the same species that had wiped out humanity, now trembled at the sight of a single ship. It was poetic justice. Carter's focus remained on the signal. It led them to a hidden prison complex beneath the capital city, a place where the Dominion kept their most dangerous captives, those too important to kill, too valuable to erase. As the ship's cannons rained fire on the city, Carter and his team descended, breaking through the fortress walls with ruthless precision. Inside, the prison was dark, cold, filled with forgotten souls. And there, in the deepest cell, they found him. An old man, his body weak, but his eyes still sharp, stared at them as they entered. He had been waiting. Carter stepped forward. "Who are you?" The man smiled, his voice hoarse but strong. The last piece of the puzzle. He had knowledge, secrets the Dominion had buried for a century. He had the key to something even Carter had not expected. The war had never truly ended. It had only been delayed. And now it was time to finish it. As the alarms blared and the enemy forces closed in, Carter lifted the man to his feet. The Forgotten had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The galaxy had long forgotten the name of humanity. The empires that once feared them now ruled over their remains, their worlds stripped of life, their monuments turned to dust. The archives held no records of their existence, erased by those who wanted their story to fade into nothingness. The war that had ended them was spoken of in hushed tones, a conflict so brutal that no species wished to remember. And yet, despite the efforts of their enemies, the legacy of humanity refused to die. It waited, hidden in the shadows, buried beneath the ruins of forgotten worlds, waiting for the right moment to return. Far beyond the reaches of known space, a lone vessel drifted through the darkness. Its hull was ancient, scared by battles that had been lost to time. It had been floating in silence for centuries, powered by systems that should have failed long ago. But deep within its core, something still remained. An intelligence, old yet aware, waiting for the signal that would awaken it. And then, after centuries of silence, the signal came. The ship's lights flickered to life, its systems humming as power surged through its veins. In the command chamber, holograms began to form, memories of the past, stored within the ship's archives. A voice, human and strong, echoed through the chamber. "If you are hearing this, then humanity has fallen, but our legacy must endure." The message was old, recorded by the last survivors of a dying race. They had known they would not win the war, but they had prepared for the day when something, would find their legacy and remember who they were. On the edge of the galaxy, the HFY Dominion ruled unchallenged. They had been the ones to erase humanity, to wipe them from history. They believed their victory was complete, that no human had survived. But in the depths of space, something was changing. Disturbances had begun to appear, lost beacons activating, ancient human relics sending out signals that should not exist. The Dominion's High Council dismissed it as background noise, remnants of a dead race. But one among them, a HFY scholar named Varrock, was not so sure. He had spent his life studying the war against humanity, searching for secrets that his own people wished to forget. And now, for the first time in centuries, he had found something worth fearing. Varrock stood before the council, his voice steady but urgent. The humans prepared for this. They left something behind, something we did not destroy. The others laughed, dismissing his warnings as paranoia. But Varrock knew better. He had seen the old records, the fragments that had survived the purge. Humanity had not fought for survival alone. They had fought for something greater. And whatever it was still out there. The signals led to a dead world, a place where no life should exist. Varrock took a ship and traveled alone, guided by the coordinates hidden within human ruins. When he arrived, he found what he had feared most, an ancient human vault, still intact, its systems running on power, sources beyond anything his people understood. As he stepped inside, the doors sealed shut, and the holograms came to life. Faces of long-dead humans stared at him, their eyes filled with something he could not name. To those who find this, a voice echoed, "Know this, humanity may be gone, but our legacy endures. We were not the strongest. We were not the fastest. But we were relentless, and that is why you should be afraid." The vault was not just a storage facility. It was a weapon, a final gift from a species that refused to be forgotten. As Varrock watched, the systems activated, sending out signals across the galaxy. Human technology, hidden in the depths of space, awoke from its slumber. Warships buried beneath the surfaces of dead worlds powered up. AI constructs long thought lost reconnected. The galaxy trembled as the legacy of humanity reached out from beyond the grave. The Dominion reacted too late. Their fleets scrambled to respond, but they were facing something they did not understand. Humanity was gone, but their creations remained. Machines built for war, programmed with the memories of a race that refused to accept defeat. They moved without hesitation, striking at the heart of the Dominion, overwhelming defenses with strategies designed by minds long dead. Varrock stood in silence as he watched the chaos unfold. He had studied humanity, believed he understood them, but he had been wrong. They had never fought for survival alone. They had fought to ensure that even in death, they would have the final word. The Dominion had won the war, but they had not won the future. Humanity's legacy had seen to that. As the first human warship in centuries emerged from the darkness, its cannons charging, Varrock whispered the truth his people had ignored for too long. We never destroyed them. We only delayed them. And now, the reckoning had begun.